all praise to Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So, QAnon, be careful of who you hate. So, I'm sure if you're researching Q, you know about the Hegelian dialectic and what it is. But, there is a formal definition, but I don't really go by the formal definition because my understanding of what it is and how it works, just you get two sides and the way it seems to work is you've got two sides in a situation, like in a political environment, and one side let's call the left, and the other side let's call the right, and you get one of those sides really riled up, and you pull them down an extremist path, and the other side basically has no choice but to also go down that extremist path, because if you've got a bunch of psychopaths, let's say. And they all want the complete extermination of the other side of politics, then the other side of politics has no choice but to defend themselves because, they're going to get wiped out. So if you, for example, have a left side of politics that wants communism, and if you know that communism leads to starvation and slaughter and slavery and the worst possible things, because we've seen that happen over and over again. And if you see, if the right side of politics sees the left side of politics pulling strongly in that direction, the right side of politics has no choice but to go strongly in the other direction. Or at least, there's not just it gets to the point where you can't just be moderate anymore in the face of an extremist opposition. And so that's sort of how the Hegelian dialectic works. You create an enemy, and an extremist enemy, and then the opposition to that enemy, even though they might be reasonable, generally speaking, in what they believe and what they want, in order to fight this enemy, they need to themselves become extreme. So that's how the Hegelian dialectic seems to work. And then, because at the end of the conflict, you get a balance between these extremes, but it's not a balance between two moderate parties, it's a balance between two extremist parties. And, you tend to not get something moderate. You don't go from two extremes, a compromise in the middle. It tends not to be moderate. It tends to have a bit of each, or quite often one side will wipe the other side out. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. Another thing worth keeping in mind is a lot of people like Obama, despite the fact, knowing the things that as a follower of QAnon, or even just as someone who's a Republican or someone on the right side of politics who understands that Obama's not a good guy. And there are people who like Hillary Clinton. There are people who like James Comey for some reason. I mean, there are people out there who, they're so strong in their ideology that they're completely blinded to the flaws in the people they support and the flaws in their ideology. They're so opposed to the evil Nazis, for example, on the left, even though they're blinded to the fact that whilst, yes, there are evil Nazis, there are Nazis. There are neo-Nazis, there are those people, but most people aren't neo-Nazis. But the left, they're blinded by that. They're blinded by their ideology, let's say. And so there are people who really like Obama. It's just worth remembering that there are people who really like Obama and support Obama and would probably die for Obama, and really think he was a good guy, and they would vote for him again as president. They think he did a good job for 8 years, and they love Obama. It's worth remembering that when you're supporting Trump. Not to say that Trump and Obama are the same, but just remember that there are people who 10 years ago, they probably, before all this kerfuffle happened, they were probably reasonable people that you could have had a conversation with and you could have been friends with. But politics and the way the world is going, the media, has been divided to the point where people who could have got along a decade ago now want to kill each other. It's worth remembering those things, and worth remembering that the other side sees your side the same way you see them. It's worth remembering that. Now, with QAnon, some other things to point out. On qmap.pub, you can type in search terms and you can search through the Q posts. I recommend going there and searching for a few things. One of them is faith. And I want you to look at how many times Q has told you to have faith and who Q has told you to have faith in. Q has There's two groups of people I want to talk to here. Firstly is Christians who, I mean, you really should have no excuse. If you're a Christian and you're following QAnon, you should have absolutely zero excuse. You should know that QAnon is not from God because you've read the Bible, right? And the first video I posted on this channel has a comparison between some Q posts and the Bible. But you shouldn't, you should watch that video if you support Q and you're a Christian, but you should already know. If you know the Bible, if you know Jesus, you know that QAnon is not from God. You know that QAnon is Luciferian. But to those people who aren't Christian, I'll speak to you. So, yeah, look at how many times Q has told you to have faith, and who has Q told you to have faith in. That's something. Look into that. I also want you to think about how many times Q has talked about God, and I want you to also then look into how many times Q has talked about Jesus. And I want you to note that there are multiple gods that people worship in this world. For example, the Freemasons. They worship Lucifer. And they will say things like, they'll say God, they'll use the word God, but they're not referring to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're not referring to the Father. And they're certainly not referring to Jesus. And when they say Savior, and when they say Messiah, they're not talking about Jesus, they're talking about the Antichrist. This is Luciferians. This is Freemasons. This is there are different types of worship, lots of different religions, let's say. But I want you to look into, go to qmap.pub and type in God and see how many times God is talked about. And then I want you to think about patriots and where we go one, we go all. I want you to think about how many times in the history of the world has there been a coming together of people, all with one accord, all wanting the same things. And how many times has that worked out well in history? I want you to think about that. I would posit that pretty much 0 times has that worked out well. I also want you to think about how many times it has worked out well when a military has taken over a country. And when a country has turned from a democratic country to a totalitarian country. And we've had a military takeover of a democratic country and it's turned into a totalitarian military dictatorship. I want you to think about how many times that has worked out well. I also want you to think about how many times it's worked out well when the media has been destroyed. That should be obvious as to why I'm asking you to think about these things. So, yeah, the things that you accept when you get pushed by an enemy, you compromise your morals. When you see a communist threat rise up in your country and you see a communist threat rise up in the world, it's a serious threat, isn't it? And it's easy to compromise your beliefs and your morals and your ethics. You might, for example, start to wish pain on other people. It's another search term you can search for with Q, pain. See how many times that is mentioned, and the context in which it's mentioned, the type of way it's expressed with Q and then the Q movement. And think about, do you really wish pain on other people? Is it a good thing to become like your enemy? What about murder? Well, not murder necessarily, execution. Do you support executing people? And how many people would you be comfortable executing? For what level of crime? I mean, I can understand if people have raped and tortured children, for example. I can understand you wanting to execute them. And, if there's a lot of people who have done those really bad things, then, I don't know, maybe are you going to be okay with 10,000 people being executed? If that's as many as have done these bad things? What about 100,000? Is there a point where you draw the line, you say, all right, that's enough people that we've beheaded, that we've shot, that we've gassed, that we've given lethal injections to? Are you okay with that? I want you to think about that and think about, just think about that. What are you willing to support? Now, the media are pretty corrupt worldwide, I would say. Generally speaking, it's very left-leaning, the communist threat. Are you going to be okay if that goes away? Like with the media, the mainstream media. Are you going to be okay if that goes away? And what's it going to be replaced with? Who's going to be in control? Are you okay with that? What about politics? How much opposition is there going to be to the right-leaning, side of politics in the world if all this Q stuff breaks down? And are you okay with that? Are you going to support it? Are you going to support that change? Because, like the left are bad at the moment, but are the left so bad that you want to completely eradicate them and not have that point of view existing anymore? Are you okay with that? And some more questions. So, religion. If you're a Christian, as I've said, you already know that Q is Luciferian, and because you read the Bible and you've compared the Bible to what Q says, and you know that Satan appears as an angel of light, and you know what's going on. This is the end times, right? This is the great deception before the end. This is how the New World Order comes in. This great deception of the final Hegelian dialectic. Satan and these evil people who worship Satan, the darkness, the dark things of this world, and they're going to be exposed by the light. Lucifer, the light bringer. The light comes in, dark, Satan, to light, Lucifer. The dark things of the world get exposed by the light things. Order out of chaos. That's the way Satan works. That's the way Lucifer works. You create chaos, and then you create order out of that chaos. The Phoenix Rising. You know this stuff, right? Because you've been doing your research. And you know this is what's happening. You've looked into the Freemasons, and you've looked into the Illuminati, and you know the ideology of these people. And surely you've read the Bible. I was an atheist when I started looking at the Q stuff, and I've read the Bible now, and I've done research. It seems obvious to me, but you've done that research too, haven't you? You're not just going along with the flow. How many times is it that a mass movement of people, something that's mainstream, how many times has a mainstream movement been good? If you're on 8chan and you're on 4chan, you probably know that the mainstream sucks. So if something becomes mainstream, there's a problem with it, isn't there? That where we go one, we go all. How often has that worked in history? How often have you agreed with normies? Are you going to be okay with this movement? If it goes mainstream, is that a good sign or is that a bad sign? Or questions. There's a lot of questions that, on this channel I've tried to show you what I believe to be the truth. And I've tried not to put too many videos up. It's hard to restrain myself because I see the way things are going. And I know that I can't do anything about what's happening. Ultimately, it's going to play out, and it's been prophesied, and I'm a Christian, so I believe that the prophecy is going to play itself out. But these are some questions that I'm asking. Have you got the answers to these questions? Have you really thought through? Are you on the Trump train? Are you caught up in the momentum of the situation? Are you fighting the enemy so hard that you've forgotten who you are? Who are you? And what do you believe? And what do you want really? Do you trust in Jesus? If you're a Christian, you do, right? And only Jesus, and every man you let be a liar, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And the only way to the Father is by Him. That you trust Jesus, right? You don't trust some man on earth. How many times has there been a great leader in history that's taken over the world, led the world to a patriotic, we're all going to work together and be good? And I'm sure it's happened, but it tends to go bad, Anyway, think about these things. Think about these things. And I highly recommend that you get in touch with Jesus if you don't know Him. Get on your knees and give yourself to Him. Call out to Him and say, Jesus, please give me your Spirit. Please give me understanding. Please save me out of this world. I'm a sinner. I'm a dirty sinner. I need your help. I can't do it myself. I need you, Jesus. Cry out to Him. That's what I suggest. Now, if you don't do that and you're still around when the Antichrist pops up, and the Antichrist may be Trump, might be JFK, might be someone we don't know, who knows? It could be any number of people. Just be careful who you follow. God bless. May Jesus lead you to the truth. Amen.